Welcome, guys, to another episode of Filmmaking Times Live. I'm Tom Antos, and as always, we got Lucas here.
Hello, everyone.
All right, so hopefully you guys can hear us okay. Let us know. And for those of you on Facebook, I don't know, I've been having just some problems with Facebook, so like usually, but hopefully you guys can see us there too. Anyway, so let's start the show. So today's show I wanted to do about choosing the best camera for the project or for the job that you're working on. And then because it seems like there's a lot of there's some people who are kind of confused by the comments that I give or my answers on some of these videos, particularly like the last film that I did in Ecuador, where I chose to shoot the film on the Sony A6500. And a lot of the comments I got were, well, why would you choose that camera when you have access to all these other cameras? And yes, I have access to much better cameras. I mean, I own the Ursa Mini, but I pretty much I could get any camera for very cheap, or if not even for free, because of some of the connections that I have. So, I could, yes, I could be shooting pretty much on any camera that I want, but I decided to shoot it on the Sony 6500 because there's a lot more to choosing the camera than just basically when you're looking at the actual image quality or the best type of basically image that you can get out of a certain camera. And I would say the first the biggest thing is probably the budget, right? You're looking at the budget, and then when I say budget, I don't mean what you can afford to get or buy in terms of a camera, or which camera you can afford to rent. Because like I said, in my case, I can pretty much have access to any camera, and it doesn't really there's no difference for me in cost when it comes to the camera itself. When I'm talking about when I say the budget, I mean the actual budget of the project that you're working on. Because you got to look at it, I guess I would say more than just like I said, just the camera itself, and kind of look at your overall production and how easily you're going to be able to work with a certain camera. Maybe before I kind of get into that more, I just wanted to show you the camera that I kind of use on a lot of, whether it's indie or bigger budget kind of projects. My kind of favorite here camera, which I have here, and this is actually a build that I did of this camera that I used on a film that I shot this week. And as you can see, this is the Ursa Mini 4.6K. Great camera, I think. Amazing image quality, dynamic range, all that stuff. Shoots raw, so 14-bit, all that beautiful stuff. And as you can see, I have a nice cinema lens, the Zine lenses. Nice big sturdy matte packs that I can even, a lot of times when I'm hand holding it, I'm just holding it by the matte packs. Even though I do have a handle here. And as you can see, I have a nice foul focus monitor for my focus puller, all of that good stuff. But you'll also notice the camera's pretty damn big. Can't even really fit all that well here in this shot. So it's a big camera, and it's a heavy camera. Let me tell you that. This whole build right now is around 21 pounds, I think, or around 20 pounds, because I did change a few things. And this is still not like the biggest setup that I've sometimes I'll be working with when I work with this camera. This was done for this very indie project that I shot, like I said, this week. So I kind of stripped it down, you could say. So what I, bare minimum in terms of, I needed a good lens, good matte packs, follow focus, a monitor for my assistant, and then that's pretty much it. And then the battery. But as you can see, the battery is massive here, compared to batteries that, let's say you're working with many other of these cameras, which might be digital, like a DSLRs, DSLMs, or even like the new sort of, I would say, these pro quality cameras like the Sony FS5, FS7. Those cameras have still much lower, smaller batteries. So yeah, so it's a pretty big and heavy setup, and that's something to take into consideration, especially when you consider it to this camera, the Sony 6500, which is again what I decided, and this was kind of like what I was deciding between when I was shooting my last film. I was kind of deciding between this camera and this camera, which one should I go with? And like I said, in the end, I went with this one, and I'll kind of explain to you guys why, and maybe you can tell me if you agree, don't agree, all that stuff, how you go about choosing the camera. But hopefully, for those of you guys who are beginners, or especially if those of you guys who have a production company, and let's say you're dealing a lot of times with clients who are don't understand maybe the logistics, and sometimes will push you to get a certain camera, and in the end it actually makes the project look worse. So maybe before I kind of jump into all the whole more interesting stuff of this today's topic, Lucas, any questions we have there? Any comments, things like that?
You're a ghost today, Tom. You're overexposed, but that's one thing.
Oh, really?
Other than that, what's the shoulder rig that you're using? Shoulder mount that you're using?
The shoulder mount, the whole kit here that I'm using today is let me see, I'll show you. It's from JTZ. It's a company that I think a fairly new company. They provided me this rig to kind of test out and tell them my feedback. I did use before previously their rig for the GH4, and I loved it, and I still have it. And I never used any of their kind of, I guess, rigs that they're started to build for cinema cameras. But as you can see, matte packs is JTZ, and it's nice. It's very sturdy, like I was showing you. I can hold it by the matte packs, and it doesn't shake, nothing. It's good to operate the camera that way. It even has a handle here, so you can literally lift the camera using this handle. Swing away matte packs. Yeah, it has a nice here, like for the rods support, airy, for example, rosette attachments for handles and other accessories. But it also has built-in shoulder pad that I find is smaller and actually more comfortable than the one that you get from Blackmagic. They have a top handle here that is, again, adjustable. You have a little thing here for attaching a 50mm rod, so if you want to attach a monitor. A lot of times when I'm using an EVF here, I'll attach it using the 50mm rods. It's just more secure. Yeah, it's got a lot of nice features. Even the follow focus is JTZ. So I'll probably do a video about this once I have. I've been using it for about 4 months now, and I still want to use it for a little bit more before I do like a more in-depth video talking about my experience and also because a lot of times with this gear, you know how it is. It's I think too many times people jump too fast, and they kind of they jump too fast to review a piece of gear that they literally just used for 1 or 2 days. And a lot of pieces of gear, whether it's cameras, accessories for cameras, lenses, things like that, they might be great initially when you use them, but after months and months of actual production use, that's when you start seeing things, let's say the material is not as good quality, starts breaking down and things like that. And so that's why for a lot of the reviews I do, I prefer to kind of wait, and I come out maybe with the reviews later, but I think they're better because of it. So you guys tell me.
Okay.
Yeah. So
couple of questions here. Steven Swancoat is asking. He's looking to buy the Ursa. What's your opinion on the V mount versus the gold mount? He says that he's asking which one you prefer, and also saying that looks like a lot of indie filmmakers they use the V mount, and I guess that would mean that it's easier to get batteries for that one. But yeah, what can you tell us about the V mount versus gold mount?
If it's, I guess gold mount is kind of more accepted as a slightly higher quality. That's what some people say. More reliable batteries, and I mean, at the end of the day, you're just providing, amperage and voltage, right, through the battery. So you need something to store it. It really maybe just comes down to the fact that there's not as many, or before I would say, there, a few years back, there weren't as many companies providing, or producing gold mount batteries, and so the few that were there were good, respectable companies. For V mount batteries, there was a lot more companies, and so because of that, you had some companies that were great and produced really good, reliable batteries, but then you also had some companies that produced some really, really unreliable and sometimes, not even safe batteries. So I think that's where it kind of comes from, where people kind of say that V mount is maybe not as reliable as gold mount. Like Anton Bauer, for example, has really nice batteries, and they're known for producing really good gold mount batteries. But like I said, now there's a lot more companies in both of the field types. So these are both going to be battery types. There are big batteries like the one that I have up here that provide a lot of juice for usually bigger kind of cameras. Cameras that draw a lot more power. And in my experience, I would say gold mount. The big advantage that gold mount has really is it still has like a more secure kind of locking mechanism for holding the battery. V mount. It's not to say that the batteries aren't secure. It just depends which batteries. Some companies make them better, where the V mount mechanism really locks in and the batteries don't fall out. And there's some companies but their batteries are kind of, I don't know, they don't fit the V connection. So because of that, they have a tendency of falling out on like really rough usage. But I mean, as far as power and reliability, it really just comes down to the company they go with. So, yeah, anything else?
There's here, yes, follow up question from Steven. He's asking whether you've ever had the V-mount pop off during production.
Yes, I did have, yeah, and that's one of the reasons why I'm saying that that it can be like, and it was basically when I was hand holding. So when you're hand holding the camera and you're kind of running and gunning, as they say, then that's when it can detach sometimes on you and things. So I've had it where it was actually on the Ursa here on when I was using the original plate that you get from Blackmagic. Although to be honest, I don't know whether it's that plate that wasn't very good, the locking mechanism on it, or whether it was a combination of that plate and the battery, but it just didn't align very well. And it did click in. I mean, I had it in there, but then under heavy use and a lot of like shaking and running with it, it just came off a little bit, and just enough where it wasn't making contact with it. The battery didn't completely fall off, but it just wasn't making contact with the positive and the negative, and because of that, we lost power on the camera. So.
Okay, really good question from Richard Neal. He's asking, can you talk about how much of your work allows you the latitude to show up with a small DSLR versus large professional looking camera?
So maybe to answer that question is going to be a long answer, but it's going to be kind of now getting into the whole topic. So a lot of times, especially when you're doing jobs for clients, because when you're doing stuff for yourself, it's kind of like I would say at the end of the day, you have to reason with yourself and you have to convince yourself. But when it comes to clients, what you'll find a lot of times is you'll have clients that will come in and they're going to be basically, demanding, and they're going to tell you right away, like, let's say, I want my video, let's say, like, especially when I was doing music videos, I want my music video to look like so-and-so music video. And you tell them, okay, great, we can do it. What's your budget, this, and then based on that, you start figuring out if you can get all the things that are necessary for it. But usually the first thing they'll say, and especially when you're working on kind of more lower end, projects, you'll see that with the budget that they have, you really do want to maximize it and put it towards things that really matter, which is not the camera package itself, but the actual production value. So the locations that you get, maybe an extra day of shooting, so you can afford to pay the crew and the location rentals, better lights, like those are the things that are really going to make a big difference. So basically things that are in front of the camera. And I would say location, costume design, like production design, that stuff, it makes a huge difference, and it really is what's really going to make your cinematography stand out and look beautiful versus it looking really crappy. But unfortunately, when you then break it all down, you look at their, for example, limited budget, and you tell them, yes, we can do something like that music video that you like, but in order to do that, we're gonna put pretty much all the money towards the production design, and the camera we'll use is, let's say, like something like this, right? In the past, I've shot stuff on the Panasonic GH4 and other similar cameras, or even like the Canon, all back in the day, Canon 7D, 5D. So you tell them you want to shoot on this, and they see this camera and they're like, oh, no, I don't want to shoot on that. And a lot of times it's just they haven't seen the quality, but they just get scared by the size, or it doesn't look impressive, or sometimes it is. I know for a lot of clients, they want to kind of impress maybe themselves, but also other people, that they are working with, and they want to look like Mr. Big Shot. So they want to have a nice big camera versus this tiny little thing just doesn't look very impressive, right? So that's the first thing that they'll do. Also, I've had clients where sometimes they'll do the research, which can be good and bad, but they've done sometimes too much research, and they'll look at, like I said, the examples that they want to kind of emulate, and then they'll find out exactly what camera that music video was shot on and what lenses, and then they'll again come to you and they'll be like, all right, so that music video was shot on the the Red Weapon, so we want to shoot a Red Weapon and I don't know, the Cook optics, CP1s or whatever. Let's say some rare anamorphic lenses, Kowas or something. So I want to shoot on that, and then you tell them, all right, well, I mean, we can do that, but you definitely need bigger budget. And they're like, well, no, I already checked into it, and that's the worst when they're like, tell you, I already checked into it, and we can rent this camera package and these lenses for whatever, $2,000, a day. So I can afford to think we're shooting, let's say, for one day. I'm giving you enough money so you can rent that. But let's say the whole budget is let's say $1,000. So then you pretty much putting, 1/3 of the budget towards just the camera package, and you don't have much money then left to pay the crew, rent the locations, and all that stuff. And that's where I think a lot of times clients don't realize that it's not about the camera so as much as it is about the locations, like I said, the production design. Lenses, yes, the lenses can make a big difference. Not all of them. Like when you do see, like there's a really good comparison I've seen online from Rocket Film School, I think it is called, that channel, right? That Freddie Wong has. Lucas, I don't know, maybe you remember.
Rocket Booster? Is it Rocket?
Something like that. You guys can check it out, search for it. But it's basically search for $50 lens to $50,000 lens comparison. So when you're looking just like, especially like spherical lenses and you're comparing them, is there a difference? Yes, there's a difference. But is there a big difference? Worth 10 or 100 times more the cost? No, there isn't. And a lot of times when you look at those tests, especially in that test, they kind of just shot just like average video out on the street and whatever, you will not see almost any difference whatsoever, especially on a YouTube video. And pretty much everything we consume these days is YouTube, Netflix, that kind of stuff. You're not going to see a big difference. If you're going between maybe, let's say, anamorphic lenses versus, spherical lenses, yes, there's going to be differences obviously there, like aesthetically it's a difference. But really, I would still say the biggest difference is going to be the production design. That's the big thing. So everything is in front of the camera. And so then I'll try to convince the client and tell them, no, yes, you can afford this camera, but because of that, we cannot afford to do the nice production design. And that stuff matters more. And they'll be like, no. They'll try to convince you. And there's been actually cases where I've, you could say, turned down or just lost a job because I was kind of arguing back and forth with the client and telling them, no, I'm not doing this and renting the camera, and spending a huge chunk of the budget on just the camera because you want to shoot on a camera when there's really not that much of a difference, in terms of quality or that you're going to see between, the big cinema camera or something like this. And so, yeah, sometimes that will happen. But I think another also way that you can explain to your clients, if you're dealing with clients like that, is also that they also have to think about other things. It's not even just, like I said, is there, does this camera shoot as good quality as, my Ursa Mini here, or for example, the Red Weapon or Arri Alexas and things like that? No, obviously it doesn't shoot RAW. It's not even 10-bit and all that stuff. But, I mean, at the end of the day, you're pretty much going to end up with an 8-bit image, most cases. Even if you shoot for cinema and 10-bit, you're going to finish. But then most people are going to end up watching it on Blu-ray or streaming it online eventually. And again, it's going to be an 8-bit image. So you can still, do a decent quality job with a really affordable and small camera like this. But where you really gain advantage of a little camera like this versus that big monster here that I have, which is, again, not as big. Like if you guys, had a chance to like even just hold and kind of play with like a fully built up even Red camera, or even worse, like the Arri LF or, Arri Amiras, the first ones. They're big, massive cameras once they're built up. Comparing it to this, it's a huge difference. And in the best way that then I try to convince the clients is to tell them that, look at this little camera, I can hold it single-handedly, boom, I can take out the lens, change the lens, it's not a problem. I can throw in a nice autofocus lens and I can get, basically, this camera, especially this A6500 from Sony, has really good, autofocus. You can register faces. I can do it so that it locks onto the, the subject's face, and we can get perfect, focus on the shots and all that stuff. And I can, if I want to get smooth shots, I can throw it up, on this little gimbal right there, and I'm walking around with it. And then if I need to walk around, let's say we're going to some remote location, then I can take the camera, the batteries, all of my lenses for it, all of my accessories in this backpack here. One backpack, and that's it. And that's pretty much what I carried when I shot my last film in Ecuador. And I can do this even if, everything else goes to hell, or let's say we don't have any money to spend on extra crew and it's just literally me, and I maybe have like one person helping me with the lights, but nobody to help me with the camera. I can still work with this, and that's how I'll kind of convince them. Versus, you get this big camera, oh, that's great, But now guess what? This is how much it's going to cost you just to get this camera if I want to put it on my shoulder. Now we want to put it on a tripod. Well, guess what? Suddenly we got to rent a bigger tripod, because this camera will not, go on your standard tripod, or definitely not like a tripod that supports this. So you need a bigger tripod for this. Then to carry this big camera, that big tripod, these big lenses, like I have a bag that's bigger than the bag that holds this camera, all of its lenses, all of its batteries, accessories, and everything. And I have a bag that's bigger than that just to hold 3 of these lenses and some of the filters for this. So those are things to consider. So then you have one giant bag for the lenses, one even bigger bag for the camera with the batteries and all that stuff. Then I have another bag for mat backs and all these other accessories, monitor. Then I have another bag for a huge tripod, and that's just a tripod. And then let's say you want to get nice smooth shots that are the camera's flying around. And then I'll tell the client, well, guess what? Then we need to get a gimbal. And it's not this little gimbal that I showed you. Nope, it's this huge, let's say DJI Ronin 2. First of all, it's much more expensive. You're going to spend even more money in the budget to rent that gimbal. But then it's even more gear to carry. Suddenly we need a bigger car to transport all of this stuff. We need more people to carry all this gear. Like, it suddenly becomes a much, much bigger production, simply because these cameras, yes, they're better quality, but not by 100 or 50 times more than the other camera. But yet the trouble is, I would say, not more like than 1,000 times more of a trouble dealing with these cameras. Putting this on, like I said, on a gimbal, or some people try to attach this to a drone, which is just, I think, is insane. Or for example, putting this on a crane or a jib. It becomes a much bigger production, not because of, the fact that, you want to do something bigger in front of the camera, but simply because you're choosing a bigger camera package. So you do need the extra people. Like, to change a lens on this, you can't really do it. I mean, can you do it yourself? Yes, you can. Actually, this film that I shot this week, the last few hours, my AC had to go, and unfortunately, once she was gone, I kind of had to, rely on myself, and it was difficult. It was difficult. I had to put the camera down on a tripod each time, carefully take out one lens, put it in the bag, then grab another one, come back, and think. Whereas if you have an assistant, they come in, they help you quickly swap out the lenses, those things, like I said, they make a big difference. And that's something that many people, including your clients, are not going to realize until you explain to them. And so then basically the way I'll try to convince my clients is, like I said, I'll tell them, so yeah, if you want, and you're saying you can afford this bigger cinema camera, great. But now I need to hire, let's say, 3 more guys to carry the gear, and another camera assistant. You want the gimbal shots? Great, let's get this gimbal. Now suddenly it costs, even almost twice as much now to rent the camera plus the gimbal. You want some shots on sticks? Okay, we need to get a nice tripod and all that stuff. And just charge the client, especially if you have this gear, you should be charging your client for all that extra stuff and carrying it, because, just the purchase of it, but also the insurance and all of that stuff, it costs money. So when you start then adding up and showing your client that just by going with a bigger camera, how much bigger of a headache it is, and also not to mention then that you're just moving slower. Even if you have those extra assistants and stuff, you're not going to move as fast as you can with this little camera. Big example is, for example, like a lot of times these days, people like to have nice, smooth flying camera shots with their on a steady cam, but probably most of us now shoot on gimbals. Again, this thing, I can throw it up on that little single-handled, gimbal, and I myself can operate it. I've done it even on my film that I shot in Ecuador, where I had this on there. I put on my, the Sony E-mount lenses that are really good AF. And because it has touchscreen in the back, I was able to, one hand, hold the gimbal, the other hand, I would just tap ever so on where I want to focus. And like I've almost never had any problems with focusing. Whereas guess what? With the cinema camera, to get that to work, you have to, like I said, not only get the bigger gimbal, but suddenly you need to get what? Because there is no autofocus on any of these cinema cameras. Red camera, Aries, Alexa, Miras, LF, none of those cameras will have autofocus. So suddenly what do you have to do? Well, you have to then rent wireless focus system. Then you need to most likely get, unless you have a really amazing follow focus puller who doesn't pull focus off of a monitor, but then you're paying him a rate, usually above $2,000 a day. So if you want to get, an average focus puller or just your, AC pulling focus, you're going to need a wireless video system so that he can sit on a video village and he can watch what's happening on screen, and he can basically, pull focus that way. And those are the kind of things that, again, that then just means you need more gear. It takes more time to set up that gear. You need a bigger team. And guess what? Even when you have somebody remotely pulling focus on your shots, you're still going to have takes where sometimes, it's human error. They're learning and they might not be as experienced, and you're going to have some mistakes. Whereas with this, I find that the autofocus is actually a lot more reliable. And I'm going to show you guys as soon as I can some clips from the film that we shot on this camera, and I'll show you, obviously where I wished we had like a nice proper cinema camera that shoots in RAW, where there were some problems, with shooting a lower quality camera. But overall, first of all, that project wouldn't even been done, wouldn't have been finished, and especially not on the schedule and the budget that we had, how we decided to shoot on the Ursa or the Red camera or any of the Alexa cameras. So, any of the Airy cameras, I should say. So yes, I mean, at the end of the day, those are the kind of things that people don't think about, is that it's not just the camera, but once the camera gets bigger and heavier, suddenly everything, the support gear, the accessories, everything, the batteries, like I said, the batteries are a lot more costly, but also it's problematic too, especially if you're traveling. And that was another big thing for me, is I knew we were going to have to travel to Ecuador, and traveling with V-mount or Anton Bauer or, gold mount batteries, any of those batteries, big cinema batteries, they have a lot of, juice that they hold. They're very big batteries. And lithium-ion batteries, if you know anything about traveling with them these days, it is a big pain in the ass, because most of the airlines, like TSA already here in the US, is kind of limited down. But on top of that, airlines themselves are putting big limitations. So there's been places like, for example, I had a buddy, a friend of mine the other day who said he was traveling through Europe. He had just had a stopover, and because he was there and he obviously had the camera and the batteries with him in his carry-on, because you have to take that, he got stopped. And where he was leaving from, they said, oh yeah, it's no problem, you'll get through. But then in Europe, it was a stopover. He had to throw out the batteries or just miss his flight and try to book another flight because the airline would not let him under. So he threw away almost $1,000 worth of batteries. I mean, it's pretty ridiculous, and I know he's very pissed off about it. But that's
what's the airline, so we can?
No, EasyJet or WestJet, something like that. It's a smaller airline. I forget now the name of it.
Well, in Europe, it's EasyJet that flies within Europe. WestJet, they fly from Canada to Europe. They do have flights to Europe.
So I think it was EasyJet, yeah. But yeah, one of those airlines. But to be honest, like, those are things, again, that people don't think about, and clients a lot of times don't think about. And for me, we knew that we're shooting the film in Ecuador, where we're shooting. It's either very difficult, not impossible, to renting a lot of the gear, or if you do find it, it's super expensive. So we pretty much had to bring most of the gear ourselves. And because of that, again, I was like, well, I can fit the camera, I can pack the lens as well, all that stuff. But then the batteries, it was a problem. And I knew I can only take so many batteries. And there was always a risk, because sometimes you'll call the airline, they'll tell you, yeah, everything's great, you can take this amount of batteries. But then on the day off, sometimes they'll make changes or restrictions or whatever, and you will not be able to. So then it's a question of, do you miss your flight and not go at all? Or do you just throw out and lose a few $100s in batteries, right? And that can be a very painful thing. So those are, again, logistics and things that many people don't think about when working with bigger cameras. And I would say that's the biggest thing, and that's the biggest thing that you should take away from this, is when you look at the budget not of what you can afford to rent in terms of camera gear, but what you can afford to have in terms of pre-production. First of all, do you have enough of a budget to get a nice production value? So things in front of the camera, nice locations, costumes, lighting, all that stuff, set dressing. And then the other thing is, do you have enough of a budget to get the right crew to work with the camera that you want to work? Because like I said, if you know it's just going to be, let's say, you, and if you're working on a wedding video, or you're working on a music video or things like that, those are, again, those are productions where a lot of times it's just one or two people running and gunning. Yes, you can rent, a Red camera. Yes, you can, but why would you do that? Like, you're not gonna end up with, first of all, not as many shots you'll be able to get, because it's just slower, slower to, yeah.
So sorry to interrupt, but yeah, I was thinking when you're talking to clients, that's maybe one of the good ways also to explain to the client in terms of like how many shots you'll be able to get. That might be a good, argument.
Yeah, you're not gonna be able to move also as fast from one location to another, because again, you have more gear to carry, right? And just even if you're doing in that one location, you're just not going to be able to get as many setups done, so less shots. And like I said, just in general, it's you might get less quality because again you're trading off that time for setup and everything, and you don't have enough time to then make sure that you're directing the actors well, that the location and all that stuff looks good. So those are the kind of things that you got to be really aware of. And then when it comes to like once you decide, okay, do I go with a big cinema camera package or do I go with something small, portable, like those DSLMs most of us are shooting these days with? Then I would say you also want to, within each of those categories, you want to kind of look and decide, okay, am I going to be, for example, like, well, first of all, what do you have access to more easily? But even like when it comes to cinema packages, which I might do another video that just kind of breaks down that process of like, why would you want to go with the red camera versus Arri, let's say Alexa or Lev, or versus Ursa, in some cases, or Sony FS7? There's again advantages and disadvantages. Like big one is, for example, like just the way that you can build up cameras. Cinema cameras again are meant to be kind of, you're usually going to attach a lot of big accessories and all that stuff. Some cameras are better than others for that. Like for example, Arris are beautiful cameras and all that stuff, but they're not very modular. They're pretty much you kind of get the camera with the handles, everything attached. It's great, but if you want to reconfigure that to throw it on some specialized rig or mount or something, it might not be as easy to work with that camera. Versus, for example, Reds are beautiful modular cameras. I mean, you can pretty much detach the card readers, the handles, the controls, the remote, all of that stuff. So you can really strip it down and just have this little brick, or you can attach things, or you can build it the way you want it. Now, for example, where the Ursa might be great is Ursa is not as modular maybe as the definitely isn't as modular, I would say, as the Red, but it's a lot easier to work with in terms of, first of all, power consumption and all that stuff, but also if you need to run, let's say, live audio on location, because Red cameras are not very good for the audio, and pretty much if you're recording audio on them, it's pure just scratch track. You don't expect to ever use the audio. On the Ursa, with the Ursa Broadcast or Ursa Mini Pro, those cameras, you can get really nice audio, and again, that's the advantage. And sometimes when you're shooting, let's say, a documentary, running and gunning, again, fairly small team, but you're gonna have, let's say, the sound department shooting, let's say, on their audio separately. But you might also sometimes have to be like really self-reliant, because a lot of documentaries you're gonna be in small little areas and spaces where you can't fit an audio team and with a boom and everything. And then guess what? You're recording the audio with a good shotgun mic that you can mount right on your camera. Well, with my Ursa, I can do that. I can attach that stuff, and I can get really good quality audio right in camera, where I don't need to sync it after and any of that stuff. So that's where some of the like advantages, disadvantages. And then when it comes to, for example, cameras like there's the smaller cameras, DSLMs, whether you should go with Sony A6500 or A7S II or GH5. Those are the kind of, again, decisions where it's going to be more on the kind of lenses that you can use. Certain cameras can adapt more lenses better than others. The image size sensor, like things like that, that are going to be just better for some things. And so again, I can probably do another video on a whole topic on just that, deciding between those categories. So, but there's a lot more to think about, like I said, when it comes to than just the getting the best image quality. Because at the end of the day, like I said, with this camera, Sony 6500, obviously I'm not shooting RAW. I'm not getting as good of an image quality as I could with any sort of professional cinema cameras. But what I'm gaining is, at the end of the day, like I said, on the budget that we had, we were actually able to finish the film that we wanted to shoot. For example, we were shooting a shark movie, right? It was called Shark Bait. A lot of the stuff was shot in the water. This, you can get it for $400 or $500. You can get a really good underwater housing unit. And I would just throw it in there, and I can quickly set up the camera with the underwater housing, and I can jump in the water, get shots, get out, take it out of the underwater housing, keep on shooting, again, throw it in there, and it's easy. To get underwater housing for any cinema camera, including the Ursa, it's first of all a lot more expensive. You're talking about $5,000-$6,000 for a good one. And then on top of that, just carrying that and setting it up is not as easy. It's not something that you can be while you're on a boat out in the ocean. You can pop the camera in there and thing. You have to do it in proper environment and all that stuff. So again, it's just, it's a lot slower and harder to work with those bigger cinema cameras. So those are the kind of things that hopefully you guys will take into account in the future when you're deciding on jobs. And hopefully I kind of gave you a little bit of a bargaining, points and chips, so you can kind of help, convince your clients to to sometimes opt out and go with a smaller camera because they're gaining all these other things that they haven't thought of. Even though there's maybe slightly the image quality is not there. And also another thing I would also say is when you're talking to your clients, make sure you tell them that yes, you're shooting and you're not shooting raw and you're not shooting, if let's say 12-bit image or 14-bit, but if you work with this cameras like these that shoot 8-bit properly, meaning you obviously can't make mistakes with white balance. You can have a little bit of adjustment thing, but not as much as you can with raw. You can decide your white balance afterwards. You can decide your ISO afterwards, things like that. With these cameras, you have to make sure you get the exposure perfectly and then you get your white balance perfectly. Once you get that, then you can actually get really amazing quality images with this. Like to the point where I've shot with, this camera or GH4, GH5, and I finished projects and I had them released. And I remember one time we had a video transfer house where they were basically transferring. It was back in the days when transferring music videos to beta cams, digibetas. And I remember guys there, they dealt with big budget movies, big budget music videos. And I remember I talked to one of the technicians and he was like, wow, like he transferred my music video and he was like, man, music video that looks really awesome. The shots that you got, like all that stuff. He's like I never heard of this artist, but I guess they must have had a big budget to so you could rent, And I think he was guessing that I shot it on the Red Epic, and then I told him, no, actually, that was the GH4, and he's like, what? Which camera is that? I'm like, oh, it's this little DSLM. He's like, no way. So he didn't even believe me that I shot it on that, because at the end of the day, all he saw is the final product, and he was like, wow, like the images just looked amazing. So again, it can be done, and I think those are things that are more important. So hopefully you guys get a good takeaway from today's video. Anyways, I'm gonna stop talking now, and maybe just take some questions if you guys have any.
Just wanted to throw in that especially if you're starting out, like don't spend too much time thinking about like trying to make the optimal decision of which gear to use, because it's okay if you don't pick the best, the optimal equipment. It's like it's more important to just get rolling, right, and just get
exactly to get something right, to get something in the can, yeah.
It will help you so much, and then down the line, if you're a pro, then and you're doing big jobs, you'll spend more time and like pick the best tools, But also with time, you'll just have way more experience. You'll know what you like, what you don't like, because some of the stuff is personal, also, like how you like to work and so on, right? Some people are hands-on, Some people want a crew, and so on. So that also changes things, And but that's the most important thing is let's just getting shots, right? Getting started. Okay, here are a few questions. So there was a whole bunch of questions about where people are asking you about like which camera you prefer. So you kind of answered a few of them, but let's say what's your opinion, for example, on the Canon C100 Mark II?
If I haven't really used it on a job, so I shouldn't be saying, because obviously it's biased because, again, I haven't used it. But and it just simply came down to the fact that, like, I was never that invested in the Canon world and, Canon batteries and all that stuff. So I've just never been a big Canon guy, other than, like, some of the early DSLRs, right? Obviously, I used of theirs, but not their cinema line cameras. So that's the reason why. But they're great cameras. I mean, there's a guy I know in Ecuador, actually, who owns one, and he when I had the chance to kind of play around with his camera, or some of the people that I know here in New York, they're great cameras, amazing cameras. It just really comes down to, like, are you already more invested into Canon or Sony or maybe Red? Like that for a lot of these shooters, especially DPs who own their cameras, like let's say if you're a Red guy and you're only really on the Red cameras and stuff, it's just you're probably gonna stay in that, because a lot of these accessories and things you can carry forward in your thing. A lot of the lenses you're gonna be able to reuse them with you're gonna go through cameras, but you're not gonna be changing up and all those other accessories that you have. So that's the reason why. Yeah.
Okay, here are a couple. Again, a couple quick questions. Hopefully, you can answer them quickly because it will. Okay, so here the camera. Which one would you choose? GH5S or A7S II? And again, like.
Okay, so
probably we'll take a whole video to explain it well.
Yeah, well, I think there's a much quicker way. So here's if you go to our website, which we have it in the description of this video, you can check it out. The links to this. So Tom Antos Films, you just go to gear and just click on that, and it's going to take you to this page we have that look is kind of nicely laid out for everybody. Investing wisely in film gear, and this is pretty much my philosophy on why and how, kind of what I explained to you guys. But now it's nicely here also broken down into the cameras, the lenses that I've personally used and that I can recommend. So you can see here, for example, you can click on cameras and it's going to show you right away the camera. What are the things to consider? Why, right? So you can read through this, and then it shows you some of the cameras that I recommend. So like the Sony A6000. Now this is a little bit maybe outdated now. Well, I still kind of say that this is like a good affordable camera if you can get it used, obviously, because they're not being manufactured anymore. Another camera is EOS, Canon EOS 80D. Then other cameras to consider are like the G85, G80, 81, or for example the the GH4, GH5, right, cameras. Another camera that I love and that I guess I used it on the last few projects is Sony Alpha A6500. And then I gave a few other similar options and why and all that stuff. So everything here is kind of broken down. You see my Lumix GH4, and then for example my other favorite camera, which is the Blackmagic Ursa Mini Pro, or 4.6K. There's really minor differences between these two cameras. But anyways, I can explain to you why I prefer this and all that stuff, and also why sometimes you should go with this big camera, kind of what I talked about today. And why you should go with this one or that one and all that stuff. Also, another way, if you want, again, on the bottom of this video, you can click, check in the description on kit.com/Tom Antos. You will find kind of like I update these quite often, so you're gonna find like my live streaming setup. Like some people ask, like, what is it that I use for my live streaming here? Well, you click on this, and you're gonna see all the stuff that I use on live streaming. And if you click on these, a lot of times they're gonna give you extra info on why and how. And all that stuff, and you can right away find links for where you can buy this stuff. And these are going to be affiliate links in case you guys didn't know. So you're helping us basically support us, which is always appreciated and doesn't cost you anything extra. But like I said, if you buy something, then basically the retailer takes a cut and they give us a percentage. So it's nice. It helps support the channel. Indie filmmaker kind of kit, why and how, and again everything's explained in there. And you'll have description here when you click on the cameras, and you see here. I talk about the Sony A6500 again, the batteries that I use, the lenses, all that stuff is here. I even have things that maybe, I maybe don't have experience, but we have experience from other people, like, for example, the wedding filmmaker kit. Why, which cameras, and this was, for example, based on a few people that we actually had on the show, and we kind of spoke to them. They explained to us what's the best gear and why they use that. So you can check those videos out, and plus you can check out these camera packages, my lighting tools that I use, my camera stabilizers, my documentary indie filmmaker kit, again, the audio gear I use, all this stuff, my pro filmmaker kit is all stuff that's it's affordable. I think it's the best kind of bang for the buck, and you can find all of these right here, or as I said, kit.com/Tom Antos, or just go to our website, tomantosfilms.com, and then you could click on here, just gear recommended page, and you're gonna see all that information. And I think that's the best way that I can kind of break it down and tell you guys. But right now, like the cameras that I work with the most, from like the most expensive, it's going to be Ursa Mini. Yes, the one I'm shooting like really big budget projects where the client doesn't really care, and like I said, none of the other things are issues. Then I will sometimes rent the Aries or the Reds and all that stuff. But if it's fairly kind of still low indie project, but where I know we can still afford to shoot with a bigger cinema package, I'll use the Ursa Mini Pro. Otherwise, I love Sony A6500 or GH4. I still use it. GH5 is an amazing camera, and if you watch my review, I'll tell you, if you don't own the GH4, just get the GH5. But in my case, I end up not returning the GH5, and I just kept my GH4 because I already have the GH4 and it works great. So why change it? So. But yeah, those are the kind of the main cameras that I use right now, and as always, with time things change, right? So,
all right. So we're talking about the importance of shot design and design overall in the film. So one question here from Richard Gibson: how do you get locations?
How do I get locations? Well, I mean, maybe Lucas, you can answer that because you're more on the on the production side. I a lot of times, like sometimes you have to do it, but a lot of times I don't want to worry about logistics of like locations, even finding, like I said, permits and all that stuff, because it's a huge, very intensive job. I will say from an artistic point of view, I just look at, like the way it looks, the way the location looks, and not even like as a whole, but I know already more or less, like if I'm shooting a scene, let's say only in this one spot, like let's say here even, I know, for this live stream, a lot of these reviews that I do, this is the background that you guys are seeing. I want to make sure that this is nice and clean, right? And it kind of looks interesting. And I have my kind of camera junk there on the top, but it's like a nice display. So I know that this is a good location for me to do these kind of things. Now, if you were to turn the camera around, which I've done in a few cases, then you're going to see a whole mess of camera gear all over, cables, things like that. It does not look pretty at all, and it does not look interesting. But that's kind of, as a filmmaker, I just go, all right, I know we're only in this scene going to be looking in this direction. Does this location look good from that angle? If it does, then I'm going to then sometimes tell my producer, in this case Lucas, to try to get me that location or something similar to it. But a lot of times, Lucas can tell you too that I'll just send him reference images, right? So.
Well, I mean, okay, there are two things to this, two parts of this about, in terms of getting locations. One is knowing about locations, right?
Yeah. Knowing what you want.
Well, knowing what you want, and then actually just being aware. So, if you are familiar with an area where you live in, that's a big thing. Now, if you're not, then you want to rely on people who are familiar, right?
Exactly.
Also, it's good to be good to travel, good to just like even, weekends go to different places. And sometimes you come across places and you're like, wow, this is really cool. Sometimes it might inspire actually an idea, for a story. But also it's something, that will be in the back of your mind. Now, of course, now...
And maybe quickly just to interrupt you with that point. I know we got filmmakers from all over the world, so tell us, guys, where you are from right now, where you're joining us from, and whether you have cool locations there, all that stuff, or whether you wish you were somewhere else that you could film. Because I think a lot of times what happens is people don't appreciate what they have right in their own backyard. Like, people, you just get used to it. It's funny because, like, I know a lot of filmmakers want to go to LA and shoot there with that, that like, kind of typical LA look that a lot of films are shot there. And yet I talk to a lot of filmmakers in LA, and they're all like, oh man, I wish we had the budget to go like to the Rockies or go to Mexico or go somewhere else because everything looks so average here in LA because they're just used to it. So let me know where you guys are joining us from and whether you know and you found amazing locations that there, or whether you wish you were somewhere else shooting.
Yeah, I would add to that also helps to have an eye of a photographer or a cinematographer, because I think if you as a tourist, the things you're drawn to usually are not the places you will necessarily want for films. It's like even our recent trip to Guayaquil to Ecuador, right? That city, it's a big city, and it's got some very nice waterfronts, so great for tourists, so on. But then I never thought also we've seen some music videos shot in Guayaquil, and there were a lot of these. They looked amazing, and we're really impressed with Tom about the locations that these the filmmakers found, right? And it is locations that I was not. I've been to Guayaquil a few times, but I wasn't really aware of, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And then it's a big thing. Sometimes it's not what will be interesting on camera. It's not necessarily what's the touristy places. So that's why having a photographer's mindset or skills, that it is very helpful when you do it. Now the other thing nowadays, there's lots of information on the internet. So depending, but in some places you'll be able to find more stuff. Here in Ontario, there is this whole organization that supports, basically wants to promote filmmaking here in Canada, Ontario, Canada. So they have a database of images, so you can get a lot of information this way. So it depends on locations, the more popular locations for filmmakers. They'll have information online, so that's one thing. But in a lot of this, you're being able to, to use the resources, use people and kind of using that knowledge. Now, the other part of the question is how you get locations is, so how do you actually get permission to use the location? So one thing is money, but obviously with filmmakers, indie filmmakers, it's always a problem where you might be able to offer some money, but usually you'll not be able to offer just where you'll have to convince people also, or you're hoping to that the people who are the owners, that they'll be motivated not just by the money, because otherwise you'll have to be paying the top money, top dollars or the market rates. So you want to either get people excited and so on, but a lot of what would or just get people caring about your project. So you can just give them a background information about who you are, what you guys are trying to do with the project. That always helps, just kind of make a personal connection. And we've done it too, where on our 2002, feature Other Black Skies. We just like found locations and we just knocked on the door, start chatting to people, and some people allow us to use their location for free, and private home and so on. Or some people, I think that should, I think all the locations were for free, so that was really good. But sometimes maybe you provide some amount of money, or more symbolic or whatever it is. But yeah, you don't want to just talk with your budget, with the money you can throw at people, because that becomes it's very difficult for indie filmmakers.
Yeah.
But the other thing is with locations is also, again, taking advantage of the people and that's why having like a
in a good way, you mean, right? Not taking advantage in that.
Yeah, in a good way. But like the fact is, when because if you have a group of filmmaker friends working on the one project, you'll be able maybe to use your personal connections, right? Like friendships or whatever it is, right? And if it's not just you, but a bunch of people, that your network of personal connections is so much bigger, and you might be actually surprised what kind of locations you'll be able to get, just because this person knows this person knows, and then like you can get really good locations just by using friends and family, right? If your production team is big enough, and yeah. But for example, I want to give you an example from a recent shoot in Guayaquil, where there was for this music video, they got a lot of cool locations, and they were well prepared. But then there was one location, in the city center of Guayaquil, that they couldn't. It turned out that the whole process of getting the permission just took 2 weeks or something more than the production team was anticipating, right? So it was a critical location. It's the World Trade Center, right? We actually the last video we had some shots from there, but it was a very, very important location, and it was first. It seemed like they would not be able to get it just because of the timeline. I think it's for free to shoot there. Like they were able to get it free of charge. But what happened? Well, there was turns out that one of the PAs on the shoot, he knew somebody, right, who could help in the situation, and he had some connections in the city, whatever, the permit office, and they were able to get this permission.
Yeah, a lot quicker than thing. I mean, another thing I would also say is that we have actually one interesting comment here from MK Creative Media about, he's saying in Maryland he uses the state film office and various city film offices. And he says, but even then, it's still referrals and connections, right, with people who work, is going to be a lot very, very helpful. So it's kind of like what you mentioned in that case is you can, film offices and all that stuff, they'll be able to help you, but a lot of times because of how slow they work on that stuff, it's still very helpful to know the actual people directly, right?
Well, sometimes it's people might be just worried about, whether they're going to be responsible on the set, and whether they're going to do anything dangerous. That's what might be the reason they don't want to, let their space be used. But if they know you, if they feel, that there is some personal connection, either through a third party, but whatever, somebody could vouch for you that you're going to be responsible. Then that's sometimes that's what makes the difference. Not even the money, doesn't matter. Sometimes people don't care like how much you pay them. They just like, I don't want you. I don't. There's no trust, right? So that's a big thing, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so before we end, I just wanted to send our best wishes to Pete, who's also known Dark Horse here on that's his username. He joins us regularly on the show, and I wanted to send the best wishes to Pete. He's now going through tough times. He's in the hospital. He's working on his documentary. So Pete, I hope you get to finish this documentary, and we hope to keep seeing you here on the show, every Sunday for a long, long time.
Yeah, all the best to you, and also I guess I wanted to say. It's Mother's Day, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to finish the show early today, and so we started early. Is I'm hopefully most of you guys have mothers you can celebrate this day with, and if you do, send all the best wishes. I know me and Lucas are gonna send all the best wishes to our mom. You guys gonna do anything today, Lucas?
I did some stuff yesterday, but I think we'll do some stuff. Like my daughter, she's 6 years old, but she's I think she's a budding event planner, because she's already got these things organized. So yeah, our mom is coming here, and so we'll do some stuff. But
okay.
I'm leaving it in mostly in the hands of my daughter. She's got some. She said she called them activities for Mother's Day. She hasn't organized, so we'll see.
So let me know how that goes, and yeah, and all the best to you guys and your mothers, and or your wives, and that might be mothers, and basically in your life. So hopefully you guys enjoyed today's show. You know, as always, if you guys want today, again, we didn't have time to show the submissions, but we are keeping, like I said, we are aware of the submissions you guys are sending in. But for those of you guys who are just joining us for the show, we are going to be showing, I think starting next week again, getting back into the filmmaking submission. So whether you have a film, music video, documentary, or something you're working on, work in progress, or maybe it's finished and you want to show it off the whole thing, or a trailer or something, get some exposure, then, or just want to get community feedback here on Filmmaking Times Live, then submit it to us. Again, the link for how you submit it is in the description of the video, and we'll be showcasing the work and kind of talking about it here on the show. And then also, I guess that's it. I mean, we have some cool announcements that I think hopefully we'll be able to announce next week that you guys are going to be excited about. But until then, just stay tuned, keep on checking, and make sure if you're following us on Facebook or YouTube, I'm going to keep on reminding people, you know, subscribing is not enough. You got to make sure you hit the notifications button, because otherwise, without it, you're not going to be notified about when we do these live streams, other videos and stuff like that. So, yeah, so do that. Lucas, any other last words?
No, it's just no. That's it.
No, that's it.
I really appreciate all the cool comments I see on in our chat here. It's really,
and actually, I'm gonna like I said, I'm heading out right now, but I'm usually whenever we release a new video, do a live stream. At the end of each day, I kind of go back through all the comments and I can try to answer them. So make sure you guys keep on leaving any questions that we didn't have time, unfortunately, to answer on the show live. We're gonna answer them, in the comment section by tonight. All right.
Okay.
All right, that's it. So I guess bye.
Bye, everyone.